Well, good morning, folks. And it's day 2 of this wee seascape, and it is full moon in about half an hour, just over half an hour. For those of you who need to know why they're a bit loopy at the moment. And yes. Right, let's just carry on. Where was I yesterday? So as many of you might know by now, as many of you know by now, if I can get that right, for these sessions, I work only for the duration of the hour that the session lasts, and once I down tools for the day, I don't come back to it. I don't touch it. So yes. So when I as I sit down, once I've set the camera going, I'm looking at it afresh today. So yeah, there we are. Just to keep you in the loop as to my modus operandi, if you want. Right, so as I was explaining yesterday, the vantage point for this piece, instead of being elevated slightly, looking out to sea, etc., I am literally in the water. We are literally in the water, so we're kind of floating. Maybe our feet are just touching the bottom, tippy toes. And there's this impending heaving shore break that's coming in. Well, it's a swell. So we're kind of almost looking at a water surface that is elevated. And as it passes us, so we rise above it and subside again. So you can imagine yourself immersed in this wonderful, warmish, but still refreshing water. Hearing the sounds of the waves as they pass through and cascade over the rocks, etc., and smashing up against the reef further on, and the smells of the seaweed and the little barnacles, and you can hear the little barnacles popping with air and what have you as each wave subsides. The myriad of sounds that constitute the experience. So if you can, so what I like to try to capture with my work is not just something that's visually pleasing, but something that is perhaps emotively stimulating as well. So it stirs up your perhaps childhood memories, and you start to get all the smells and all the little sounds. Perhaps it's other kids on the beach screaming and carrying on and having fun, what have you. Not screaming because there's sharks coming in. Christmas Bay is it's still fairly I don't want to use the word isolated, because it's not by any means isolated, but it's not easily accessible yet, and simply because you have to do a little bit of a trek to get to it. So you have to stop your car, park your car at the very end of Sheffield Beach, and it kind of ends with the Sheffield Beach sort of, is a sort of a longish flat U shape, and then it ends with a little bluff. So you have to walk along Sheffield Beach and around the corner of the bluff, and then Christmas Bay opens up. So you can't access Christmas Bay from right next to it or adjacent to it. However, sadly, and even as we speak, there could be, I do realize that the last time I visited there, that the ground, the land behind the little coastal belt of forest is earmarked for development. What can I say? Where there's greed, there's a need. And when there's greed on more than one side, in other words, the owners of the land, which was previously sugarcane, you can see over the, if you look that way, kind of behind where we are here right now, you'll see a lovely sort of green coastal belt of indigenous forest, and then you'll see sort of rolling hills after that on the other side of that stretch up towards Tinley Manor, and those hills were previously sugarcane. So you just see the green sugarcane. Now that land has been left unplanted, so it's now just growing grass, which means that it's no longer being planted with sugarcane, which means it's due for development, which is a very, very sad thing. But it's happened all the way along the coastline. So we just have to make the most of the last of these little treasures. And whereas previously, up until now, you go there and you might be the only people there, and especially if you walk up the coast a little bit more. It's very sparse in terms of people that come there. It's because it's not easy to access. So when you come with little kids and whatever and you want to bring your umbrellas and your cooler boxes and all that sort of stuff, then it's a bit of a mission. Whereas you've got, you park at Sheffield Beach, you've got the beach right in front of you. Here it's a little bit of a trek, like I said. So anyway, but that, as soon as we've got accessibility, and especially if we've got resorts and all that crap, then it's going to be inundated. Like I said, just like the other beaches, all the way up the coastline, up and down. especially the north coast, the Dolphin Coast, as it's called, as it's referred to. Right, yeah, sad but true. What can you say? What can you do? There's nothing to be done about it. It just is what it is, and we have to accept it and move on. So it's nice to be able to capture this part of the world, while it still holds the memories of what it once was. Anywho, right, so this whole, oh dear, oopsie, this whole piece has crumbled because I dropped it yesterday. Damn it, damn it. It's so tricky to work with these pieces, when you're working with charcoal, at least pastel, my word, and you drop it and the whole thing shatters inside. Anyway, I'll make do with these little bitty bits. So I'm just going to indicate here now where these little surges of water come pouring into the, so that we've got big flat rock above head height here. Well, flattish, and then so the waves come in, they surge up over the top of the rocks, and then as they pass on, so all the water that's on top, that it now drains off back into the sea, and that's what we're seeing here is the sea. See? Let's get that going now. And then we've got the beginnings of this next wave that's coming through here. It's surging up onto these rocks and just creating a splash. And then it'll come trundling on towards where we are, wallowing wallowing away here. So I'm going to use a little bit of my Conte as well here. fact, I want to use my pastel for this as well. See, because this is where, so that the white bubbles, it's pretty much what they are, of the, because I mean these sort of foamies of the waves, the foamy part of the waves is really just bubbles, mostly air, and that shines white under the sun, of course. So on the surface here, where the previous wave has perhaps passed and where the other water is drained off, etc., off the rocks, we've got these little white sections of bubbles that float along on the surface, and you know, they carry on. When the next wave comes through, there'll be more, and so on and so forth. So those reflect white from the sun, and then we've got actual reflection of the sky, which is pale blue, and that also will reflect, but it won't reflect white because it's water and the water is semi-transparent, but we're only seeing this is why I love it, because the water surface itself is a mirror. Depending on the angle, if we're looking straight down into the water, it's not a mirror. We can see into the water. Well, we can see partly into the water depending on its opacity, depending on what's underneath and what's been stirred up underneath. So here we can't see the little rocks and the little crabs and whatever that are on the seabed, because we have wave action coming through here in the little gullies perhaps, and the little pools and what have you, the rock pools and so on. Yes, we can see the bottom because it's not disturbed. And you see, this is why I always find I find the sea, the ocean, so fascinating, especially in a micro sense, really, which is what this is, what this piece is. A macro piece would be like I've done, perhaps a much more expansive view of the coastline, of the waves coming in, the you know, you'll get the mid break and the back break and what have you. So but this is more intimate, a more intimate experience of just being right here in this little spot, feeling everything that it's just like, feel that refreshing water and the surge and the, you know, bobbing up and down in the water and just loving it. And that's what I'm capturing with this piece, really. It's kind of seeking to stir the imagination. So, as I explained yesterday, this first sort of layer in charcoal that I'm working with, its primary purpose is to well, create the composition, and B, to lay down the contrast. So you can start to get an idea of where the light and shade is, or where the darker areas are with regards to the charcoal especially. And also depict the motion, so you can start to see emerging these little currents and so on, and as they and perhaps undulations of the water surface and all that sort of thing. And that's what the purpose of this layer is. And it's, so I'm working it up quite a lot, and as you saw yesterday, and as I'll do right now, is to work with my charcoal, my chalk pastel, white, and my eraser. Just to start getting at the idea of what the surface of the water looks like. It's not this churning, heaving mass of, you know, tumbling waves and stuff like that. This is a little bay. This is a little bay, and well, at the corner of the bay, in fact, because it comes in here around the corner of this bluff of this sort of outcrop of rocks and little gullies and little rock pools and stuff that go all around the corner here, that constitute this part of the reef. So this is kind of protected here. So comes in here, and then the bay goes way out and around, also with lots and lots of, you know, there's a break in the reef here. So from here on, further up, is all just rocky little gullies, and yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful beach. It really is. To those in the know, it's not a surf spot per se because it is reefed, but it's a lovely family beach. If you're willing to get your children and what have you down there, which many people do. You know, I don't get me wrong. It's a very, very popular place. Just takes a bit of effort to get there, and some people don't have effort in mind. Not very big on effort. So one could say it's for the discerning family. Yeah, it's naturally protected. That I don't think there wouldn't be shark nets off this beach. I don't think that there is at Sheffield either, to be honest. But then also Sheffield's quite rocky as well. So I don't know. Anyway, but it doesn't really need shark nets because it's fairly well protected by reef, and you know, sharks wouldn't want to really come in too much into these very confined spaces. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. I've previously done a couple of artworks of Christmas Bay. It's particularly meaningful to me as well, because this is the beach where we scattered the ashes of my mentor, Rod Finney, back in 2011 when he passed away. And he, because then the reason we did that was because he always loved coming to this beach with bringing his family here. So that's why it's of particular meaning as well. And so his children scattered his ashes further up the beach here, but you know, in one of the little gullies, and his ashes were pulled out to sea. So I've done one artwork of that particular spot where his ashes were scattered, and I've done another one kind of from the vantage point of up top here on this rock, which is maybe 2 meters above the water surface, standing up there looking up the coast, encompassing the bay, and with a big wave coming trundling through. I enjoyed those pieces as well. The one that I did for specifically in Rod's memory, in fact it was commissioned by his sister in England, and the one that I did for that is a very different. In fact, it was a very different style from what I usually do. For some reason, it just turned out that way, and it was actually, I think, the style, because I like to work with the energy of whatever it is that I'm depicting, and because of that, and I was feeling the presence of Rod and what have you, and the piece actually turned out to kind of capture Rod's essence of who he was as a person. So his personality shone through, which I really liked. And of course his sister appreciated it as well, and it was very obvious that this was, especially for someone who knew Rod, that others might not have enjoyed the piece as much as my other pieces, for example, but that didn't matter, because it was about Rod and his memory. So yeah, I will occasionally work on a piece, and in fact every single piece that I work with has its own energy, and I like to allow that to kind of show through. That just like this piece is, hopefully its energy is going to, its essence is going to start showing up. And also because I'm working with the entire piece at one time. I don't work in other words, once I've got my composition, and then I just fill in the rest section by section, and perfect it, get it right up to the completed, to me that robs an artwork of its character, of its essence, of its appeal, of its soul. And you'll see artworks that are, and I'm not saying that the way I'm doing it is correct. whatever. It's just how I feel and how I like to approach any piece of work that I tackle. But for me, it's about allowing the essence, the character of the piece to emerge of its own accord. It just takes place as it should, and this is why I don't have a particular specific time frame other than, well, I've got the week to do it. But there's no pressure to get it done by a certain time, etc. But the fact remains that I am producing an artwork every week without pressure, simply because I've developed this new habit of getting up and working on these artworks, on a new artwork every week and for every weekday. So I've become incredibly productive. Well, for me, that very productive, and producing more and more and more artworks as the weeks of lockdown have gone by. So started this process right at the beginning of lockdown. Right, by the way, I'm going to be adding some blue here. Blue. So yeah, started these Facebook Live sessions at the beginning of lockdown, which was, well, lockdown started on the 27th of March last year, 2020, and the first Monday thereafter, and 27th of March was a Friday, and on the Monday I went, okay, I am now essentially isolated from everyone for a time, and kind of got over that, but what am I going to do with all this time that I can't go out and I can't, so I thought, okay, well, I'll start doing some artworks and I'll share them live on Facebook so that others can join me, and it's more for others than myself. I don't really mind being, I don't get lonely, I don't worry about being alone. So I've often been accused of being reclusive, of being a recluse, but I thought, oh well, okay, let me just share my process with others that might be feeling, not part of everything and cut off from the world. And so that's the reason I kind of started it. And that was now well over a year ago, a year and a month ago, and I'm still rocking on with these pieces. I've been producing virtually for every week of lockdown. Give or take, there's been a couple of weeks where I've missed for whatever reason, but virtually for every single week of lockdown I've produced an artwork, which means that I've got, well, in excess of 50 pieces like this, representing my journey and my development, etc. So it's been a really empowering experience for me. So it went from this okay, well, let's share what I have to offer, and what have you, to a really, really empowering learning experience for me. And this is what I believe that art can do. It's not the fact that I am maybe a good artist, or I'm good at what I do. Picking up a piece of charcoal, piece of pastel, and making, and just doodling. This is why I keep on, I'm always harping on about the importance of doodling. A mosquito. Doodling is an art form, believe it or not. Well, at least in the way I see it, doodling is an art form, and we all know how to doodle, even if we might claim that we haven't got a artistic or creative bone in our body. It doesn't matter, we can still doodle, and we still do doodle. And that's really what I wanted to capture. This is what came up for me in doing my what I call mental meanderings along the way, as I've told my story about each piece that I'm doing, or about circumstances and whatever it might be, current circumstances and what have you. As I've been sharing that story with you guys, so this realization has begun to emerge that, forgive me, I need to just gather my thoughts here. What am I doing? What am I looking for? I'm looking for that one. Yes, I'm looking for the bigger brother. Where's the bigger brother of this one? Woohoo! Show yourself. Show yourself. Ah, there you go. In plain sight. I use these little sponge tool things that you know, for painting as well, but I found that they're actually quite nice for spreading. You see, just spreading the color. Spreading the color. Geez, now I've lost my train of thought. Yes, so during the process of sharing my work, I found that I came upon these realizations. No, we won't use that one just yet. Yeah, so the realizations occurred to me that it's more than just about creating an artwork, as I'm doing here. Because it's the expression of what I'm doing. Whether I am doing an abstract, and there are aspects of all of my pieces that are most definitely abstract. In fact, if I was to cut this page up after I've completed the artwork into little squares or little pieces of A6 size, you know, each and every one of those would be abstract, because it's difficult to ascertain exactly what that is, that little segment there. What is that? But it's an expression, nevertheless. That little section over there garners an emotive response. So that's what it's about, folks. That's what it's about. It's not about whether it's a good artwork or not, whether it's well executed, or whether it's, you know, showing flocks of seagulls and people with beach balls and accurately depicting a scene. It's not about that. Art is not about that. And let's even move away from the idea of what we think art is. I mean, art is stuff that we see in an art gallery, right? All that sort of thing. That's our preconceived idea of what art is. And when we wander through a gallery, For the most part, we go, ooh, I could never, it's wonderful, but I could never do that. It's not about that, because that's not what art really, really is. The essence of art, or artistic expression, is, wait for it, how we express ourselves. Yeah, we express ourselves creatively, artistically, all the time. We gesticulate, and we, you know, our bodies even are performing all the time. Surprise in our eyes, or whatever it might be, we are creative. When we think a thought, and we ponder something, and we go, ooh, that's a nice idea, let me work with that. That's artistic expression. Except that we don't realize it is, and we need to teach ourselves, or show ourselves, how expressive we can be if we choose to. So when I'm picking up some, this is a physical manifestation of my self-expression. As I work with an artwork, as I said, I like to put the energy of it and the feeling of it into it. And even as I'm working now, I'm going gently, gently, gently. I'm just feeling what the sky looks like as it recedes down to the horizon. I'm just feeling it. So I'm expressing it, not necessarily with words or even thought, but feeling. It's that stage even before we put stuff into language. It's like instinct. Instinct is not language. Instinct is just there. Then we start to language it, and it takes on a new meaning. Now we start to go, oh no, that's not what I think it is it? And we start to package it and box it according to what we know. That's where the danger lies. It's always where the danger lies, because we haven't become proficient listeners. We don't listen to ourselves, we don't listen to our instincts, our intuition. But when you pick up a piece of charcoal or something and you start to doodle, you're going into another realm. I remember when we had in the good old days, when we had dial-up phones, and on the table now we don't have those kind of telephones for the most part anymore. I don't think I've had one in years. But now when we do, at least when we have a phone, we have a little device in our hands that does everything. It's now recording this very session. Crazy to think about it, eh? But back in the days when we had these monstrous plastic Bakelite whatever contraptions with a big twirly wire and a handle and a big dial on it, and you know, so even the push button ones, you know, we had on the table, so we had, of course we had, you know, you can't just have a phone, you know, on the floor, so you have to have a little table, and on the table was the telephone, and maybe in the drawer was a God, I've even forgotten telephone directory. You see how far, you know, how we lose the idea of what we. Oh my word. Anyway, so we've got this telephone directory in the drawer or something like that, and we've got other things, or maybe a lamp on the table as well, and you know. but on the table is usually, okay, so we've got the telephone directory, maybe one of those little pop-up jobbies that have a personal telephone directory of all our friends and family and what have you, all their numbers and crossed out and as they move. God, anyway, I digress. I'll get to the point eventually. But we've also got a little pad so that we can write things down of what people say when we so write down numbers and what have you. But we also, as we're sitting there having a natter, we pick up the pen unconsciously and we start to fiddle. First of all, we might start to click, 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 click of the Bic. Then we might start to doodle. That's critical. That's where the artistic expression comes in. Because whether we think we're artists or not, the doodling is art. The doodling is actually unconscious art. It's unconscious creation. And it's so important. I can't even stress to you how important that is. The concept of that, behind that. That when we are doodling, we are doodling in automatic because our thoughts, our consciousness is given to the person that we're talking to on the phone. Our being, our unconscious state, starts to doodle and draw these little shapes, and we start little stars and all these things, and we end up with this little miniature artwork. Fantastic. It's fantastic, and that's what I can't even tell you how exciting that is for me, because I even want to call it the art of the doodle because of its importance, and getting people to understand. And this is why I want to combine the coaching aspect of what I do with art. Why do we doodle? What do we achieve when we doodle? So now it's taking it beyond the doodle. Oodles of toodles beyond the doodles. So yes, it's about helping people to discover their own particular form of artistic expression through doodling, through just messing around. And through that, being able to direct what we're thinking, why we're thinking it, where we want to go, how we want to create our lives. Realizing that we can, realizing that not everything is necessarily preordained, and realizing that we have a huge impact on the world around us if we were to realize that. In fact, we do unconsciously anyway. And I think that art simply, or artistic expression, creative expression if you want, is a fantastic means to unlock that potential. That's why I like to share the full hour with you guys of my sessions, not segmented, not sped up, because I sometimes have these little epiphanies that I like to share with people. So hopefully today's epiphany has perforated through. The percolating epiphany. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, I kind of have these little cloudbursts now and again. So if you don't appreciate, please forgive me. If you do appreciate, it's a pleasure. Yes, right. I'm just... Okay, so we've got some blue sky going on there. I think I'll leave it pretty much as is for now, and I just darken it slightly much later on. For the new, I'm just going to carry on working with this pale lilac, and I've got a slightly more mauve color, or lilac, darker lilac and pale lilac, and there's a section over here which is very light. It's because and it filters in over here as well. These little light reflections. Also with the blue, with the pale blue, as a reflections of the sky above. And it changes as that angle of vantage point changes. Colors change, hues change. Huey Lewis and the News. So the hues are continuously changing as well. The spectrum of light, that minute spectrum of light that we can perceive, it's like a scale. It's like a little scrolling the bar up and down the side of the page on your computer. It's like that. So it scales through the light spectrum according to the angle, etc. And it subtly changes, almost like you would turn a kaleidoscope, and the light reflections change. And then as we move, as our viewpoint angle becomes more obtuse, in other words, we're starting to look further down, now we start to deal with refraction as well. So that's light that inside the water, that goes into the water and bends and what have you. And I might pick up some of that, but I'm not quite macro enough in my viewpoint perspective here to accomplish that, perhaps. But we'll do what we can. We'll definitely have a bash at it. So, folks are now starting to slowly maybe follow me on YouTube and follow my work on YouTube as a newbie tubie. These are not art lessons. I will often share my techniques and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it artistically, but this is not an art lesson, nevertheless. This is an ideas incubator, if you want. So, yeah, I'm just sharing my thoughts and so on. I may introduce some actual art classes, although I'm not really drawn towards doing that. I work with the perspectives of life and living and being predominantly. A little bit of this darker mauve, but I will I don't want it to turn into a psychedelic marvel. I'm just using this as an undercolor, just a hint here and there, because anything that we see, that we look at, is captured by the full spectrum of light, right through. Roygabov, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. So the colors of the rainbow is in everything that we look at, but just at different levels. Certain colors come through, predominate over others. So that's what I'm not saying that I'm going to be putting yellow and red and whatever into this piece at all, but it's there, even in purple, even in mauve. All those colors are there in every other color. Right, I'm now going to work with a little bit of it's like a mossy sort of greeny color. And this is just kind of starting to indicate where there is. We'll be looking more into the water in front of us. And there might be a little patch of lighter. Oh, let's use my yellow. Yeah, let's use that one over here. See that the sun now is probably there, and it's probably up there. So it's now just shining into the water, and what we can see is a glow of the little particles and sand and what have you that it's just highlighting. And it'll only appear because we're looking at that angle. So in other words, almost at right angles to where the sun is coming from. That's why we can see it. Up in front of us here, we can't really see it because it's different light show. So when you have an experience of perhaps of my work, it's not photorealism, but because I give you enough to build a story, it seems real from a distance at least. Right up close where I am, it's very, very graphic. It's very graphic indeed. So yes, folks, I think we're out of time for today. Made some really good progress today. It's amazing how when you add a little bit of color, the whole thing takes on a new sort of dimension. So good progress today, and we shall continue tomorrow. So thank you for joining. Thank you for sharing. Please, bang, bang, bang in the middle of your screen at the bottom. If you're not full screen, that is. Excuse me. Please hit the share button. I really would appreciate it. For those of you who are out there, and I would really appreciate if you subscribe to my channel. Hey, you never know what you might find. Anyway, guys, have a fantastic day further, and catch you again tomorrow. So oodles of toodles. Bye bye, and yeah, have a good one. Be good. Keep safe. Bye. And don't forget to doodle.